The child's hand was small but insistent, tugging at the reinforced fabric of Marcus Kane's tactical vest. He stopped mid-stride in the crystalline corridor of the Valkyrie Royal Palace, his escort of 4 alien guards halting with mechanical precision behind him. Human. The word came in accented standard, barely louder than breath. Please. Marcus looked down. The Valkyrie child couldn't have been more than 6 standard years, her translucent skin shimmering with the nervous patterns that betrayed fear in her species. Her secondary eyes, smaller ones flanking the main pair, darted between him and the guards with something close to desperation. I'm sorry, Marcus said gently, crouching to her level. I have to meet with the council. My mother wishes to meet you. The child's voice dropped to a whisper, but her words hit like a percussion charge. Please. She's dying. The corridor temperature seemed to drop. Marcus felt the guards stiffen, their ceremonial spears shifting with the softest crystal chime. He didn't move, keeping his hands visible, his posture non-threatening. 5 years as humanity's first diplomatic liaison to the Valkyrie Protectorate had taught him that sudden movements in the royal palace could end careers. The lead guard stepped forward, his silver facial markings identifying him as Captain Thelver. The human envoy has obligations. Child, return to the healing quarters. But the child's grip tightened on Marcus's vest. She asked for him. She used his name. Marcus's pulse quickened. The Queen Mother of the Valkyrie Protectorate didn't grant private audiences. She barely appeared in public holos anymore. For 3 standard months, rumor had circulated through the palace's labyrinthine halls that she was gravely ill, but the royal family neither confirmed nor denied. Protocol demanded silence. Tradition demanded discretion. What's your name? Marcus asked softly. Livera, her primary eyes fixed on his with startling intensity. You saved my aunt, on Kepler Station, during the raiders. Memory flashed. A firefight in zero gravity. A Valkyrie diplomatic vessel boarded by mercenaries. Marcus and his marine escort responding to a distress call. He'd pulled the Valkyrie female from a decompressing cabin, sharing his emergency oxygen while her security detail secured the area. Standard procedure. He'd filed the report and moved on. That was duty, Marcus said. Nothing special, she told my mother. You stayed until you were sure she could breathe again. Livara's skin patterns shifted to something between pleading and hope. You didn't leave when the others said it was clear. Telver's hand moved to his communication device. I must report this breach of Proto. Captain. Another voice, cold and absolute, echoed down the corridor. A figure emerged from the shadows near the wall, a royal attendant in deep blue robes, her age evident in the settled patterns of her skin. The Queen Mother has been waiting. The envoy will come now. The guards froze. Marcus recognized the shift in power immediately. This wasn't a suggestion. He stood slowly, the child's hand still clutching his vest. Your scheduled council meeting has been postponed, the attendant continued, her gaze never leaving Thelvor. By order of the throne. Thelvor's face went carefully neutral. We received no such order. You have now. Silence stretched between them like drawn wire. Marcus understood the dynamic. The guard captain was bound by one set of protocols, the royal attendant by another, and they were incompatible. Someone had to bend. In the Valkyrie hierarchy, proximity to the throne decided everything. If the Queen Mother requests my presence, Marcus said carefully, I'm honored to attend. Human, you understand this is highly irregular?
I understand.
Marcus kept his voice steady, respectful. I also understand the weight of a royal summons. The captain's jaw tightened, but he stepped aside with a subtle gesture that dismissed his guards. Then I will escort you personally. The child remains here. No, Livera's voice carried surprising strength. Mother said to bring him. Princess Livera of the Third Crown. The child drew herself up, and Marcus saw the transformation, from frightened girl to royal authority, compressed into a tiny frame. I carry my mother's words. Do you challenge them? The silence that followed felt sharp enough to cut. Thelver's patterns flickered once, anger, then control, before settling into rigid formality. No, Your Highness. Then we go now. The attendant turned without waiting for response, gliding down the corridor toward the private wings of the palace. Livera released Marcus's vest but stayed close to his side, her small footsteps determined. Marcus followed, acutely aware of Thelver pacing behind him with predatory precision. They passed through 3 security checkpoints, each guard examining them with increasing intensity before allowing passage. The corridors grew narrower, the crystalline walls darker, until they entered sections of the palace Marcus had never seen. Older wings where history pressed against the present. The attendant stopped before massive doors carved from black stone. "The Queen Mother lies beyond," she said. "She wishes privacy. Only the human and the princess enter." Thalvor stiffened. "That violates the Queen Mother." The attendant's words cut like ice. "Demands privacy." The doors opened with a sound like distant thunder, revealing darkness beyond. Livera took Marcus's hand, her skin cool against his palm. "She's been waiting so long," the child whispered. "Please don't make her wait any more." They stepped into the dark together, and the doors closed behind them with the finality of a tomb ceiling. The chamber revealed itself gradually as bioluminescent panels awakened along the walls, their soft blue light painting a room that belonged more to meditation than monarchy. Low platforms held equipment Marcus recognized from Velkari medical facilities, their readouts pulsing with gentle rhythms. The air carried the sharp scent of chemical treatments and something else, something organic and fading. In the center of the chamber, on a raised platform surrounded by monitoring devices, lay the Queen Mother. Marcus had seen her before only in official transmissions, where projection and distance created an image of power absolute. This close, reality stripped away pretense. She was impossibly thin, her translucent skin showing the crystalline bone structure beneath. Her patterns flickered weakly, barely visible against her pale flesh. Medical tubing ran beneath her ceremonial robes, connecting to machines that whispered with each labored breath. But her eyes, all four of them, remained sharp and aware. They fixed on Marcus with the intensity of someone who measured every second as precious. Envoy Kane. Her voice emerged barely above a whisper, yet commanded absolute attention. "You're taller than the Hollows," suggested. Marcus bowed, unsure of proper protocol for addressing a dying monarch in her private chambers. "Your Majesty, I'm honored by your summons, though I confess confusion about why Livara." The Queen Mother's hand, skeletal and trembling, gestured toward her daughter. "Tell him what you told me." The child moved to her mother's side, her small hand carefully avoiding the medical lines. "I said you were kind. When everyone else was afraid of humans, when they said your people were violent and unpredictable, I said you were kind because Aunt Verena told me how you stayed, how you made sure she was safe even when it meant danger for you." "That was months ago," Marcus said gently. "I'm grateful she shared that with you, but I don't understand why—" "My daughter," the Queen Mother interrupted, her voice gaining fractional strength, "has what your people call autism. The Velkari Council calls it harmonic divergence. She processes the world differently. She sees patterns others miss. She remembers details others forget." A pause for breath, shallow and difficult. "She also speaks truth without understanding political convenience." Marcus glanced at Livera, whose patterns showed steady confusion at the conversation's direction. 3 months ago," the Queen Mother continued, "my physicians informed me that my condition would be terminal. The specific disease doesn't translate well. Your people don't have crystalline bone structures that can develop malignant formations. What matters is that I have perhaps 2 standard weeks remaining." "I'm deeply sorry," Marcus said, meaning it. "Don't be." The faintest hint of a smile. "I've ruled for 43 standard years. I've seen wars end and alliances form. I've watched humanity emerge from isolation and join the galactic community with admirable speed. I've lived well." The breathing caught, and machines beeped softly. "But I'm dying badly." Marcus waited. Sensing this confession carried weight beyond personal grief. "The Council," she said carefully, "has prepared my successor. Crown Prince Kaelvin will assume the throne upon my death. He's intelligent, capable, and absolutely certain that humanity represents a long-term threat to Velkari's security." The words hung in the air like a blade suspended over Marcus's head. He'd interacted with the Crown Prince during formal occasions, always cordial, always correct, but with an underlying current of calculation that made every exchange feel like a chess match. "Your people have expanded rapidly," the Queen Mother continued. "In 20 standard years, humanity has gone from one devastated system to colonies on 17 worlds. You've built a military fleet that rivals established powers. You've developed technologies that disturb the balance of power the galaxy has maintained for centuries." Another labored breath. "My son fears what humanity might become. With respect, Your Majesty, that's hardly unusual. Many species viewed us with suspicion initially, But we've proven ourselves as partners, as my son doesn't view you with suspicion. The Queen Mother's eyes locked onto his. He views you as an inevitable enemy, and he spent the last year building a coalition to ensure that when I die, the Protectorate will lead a preventive strike against human expansion. The chamber seemed to contract around Marcus. He felt his pulse in his throat, his training screaming warnings about political traps and recorded conversations. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked quietly. "Because Livera said you were kind." The Queen Mother's hand moved slightly, gesturing toward her daughter. "Because when I asked her what she meant, she showed me something she'd been carrying for 3 months, something she found important enough to keep secret from everyone, even me, until she was certain of its meaning." Livara reached into a pocket of her simple tunic and pulled out a data chip, human standard, civilian grade, the kind used for personal logs. "You dropped this," the child said, offering it to Marcus. "At the memorial service for Ambassador Thulvin. It fell from your jacket when you bowed. I picked it up, but you were already gone." Marcus's blood went cold. He had attended that service 4 months ago, paying respects to a Velkari diplomat who'd advocated strongly for human integration. He'd brought personal condolences from Earth's Council, and a data chip containing classified assessments of diplomatic tensions, contingency protocols, and communication codes. The chip he'd reported lost, triggering an immediate security review and protocol changes. The chip that had contained enough sensitive information to damage human-Velkari relations if revealed publicly. "I tried to return it," Livera continued, oblivious to Marcus's rising panic. "But there were guards and protocols, and I'm not allowed in certain sections of the palace, so I kept it safe. And I looked at what was inside because I wanted to understand humans better." "Livera," the Queen Mother said gently, "tell the envoy what you found." The child's pattern shifted to something like excitement. "You had notes about my people, about how we communicate, what we value, what frightens us. You'd studied our history back 7 generations, learning about our wars and our peace treaties and the treaties we broke and why we broke them. You'd written observations about individual council members, their personalities, their families, their concerns." Marcus felt like the floor had dissolved beneath him. Those notes had been preparation for navigating Velkari politics, but out of context they could look like intelligence gathering for hostile purposes. "She brought the chip to me yesterday," the Queen Mother said. "Explained what she'd found. She said you were kind, but also careful. That you studied us because you wanted to understand, not because you wanted to harm. She said your notes showed respect. They were diplomatic preparation," Marcus said carefully. "Standard practice for any envoy. I know what they were." The Queen Mother's voice hardened slightly. "I've spent 4 decades reading intelligence reports. I recognize assessment versus espionage. What my daughter recognized, what I confirmed, is that your notes about Crown Prince Kaelvin were entirely accurate. You'd identified his growing hostility toward humanity. You'd predicted he would move against you the moment my restraining influence disappeared. You even theorized about which council members he'd recruit for his coalition." Marcus said nothing, confirming that assessment could be seen as admitting to intelligence operations. Denying it would insult the Queen Mother's obvious understanding. "You were correct about all of it," she continued. "My son has been careful, but not careful enough. I've spent my remaining strength investigating, and I've discovered his entire plan. The moment my death is announced, he'll activate emergency protocols that place the Protectorate's military under direct Crown control, technically legal during succession transitions. He'll fabricate a human threat, present it to the Council, and launch strikes against your colony worlds before your fleet can respond. He believes a quick, decisive blow will cripple human expansion and rally other species to support the Protectorate's actions." "That would be genocide," Marcus said, his voice tight. "That would be preventive warfare," the Queen Mother corrected. "That's how he'll frame it." "And enough council members fear humanity's rapid growth that they'll support him, especially if he controls the initial narrative. Why are you telling me this instead of stopping him yourself? Because I'm dying, Envoy Kane. My political power dies with me. I can issue orders today that my son will countermand tomorrow. I can make declarations he'll declare the confusion of terminal illness. I can try to bind him with law, and he'll find legal scholars to unbind every knot." Her breathing grew more labored. "I can't stop what's coming." "But you can. How?" "By accepting what I'm about to offer you." The Queen Mother's hand moved to touch a control panel beside her platform. A holographic display emerged, showing legal documents in both Velkari script and translated standard. "I invoke an ancient provision of Velkari law. the right of final counsel. In their last days, a monarch may appoint one individual outside normal succession to serve as binding advisor to their heir. This advisor holds legal authority to delay, question, or appeal any royal decision for 1 standard year following the monarch's death. The provision exists to prevent hasty actions during vulnerable transition periods. Marcus stared at the documents. You want to appoint me as binding advisor to Crown Prince Kelvin? I want to chain my son to a human for 12 months, forcing him to justify every action, to explain every decision, to face consequences if he moves against humanity without overwhelming evidence of legitimate threat. The Queen Mother's eyes glittered. I want to give your people time to prepare, to strengthen alliances, to make any preventive strike so costly that even my son's ambition won't attempt it. He'll never accept it. He has no choice. If I invoke the right before my death, refusal means forfeiting the throne. The law is absolute, written into our constitutional foundations when my species was younger and more prone to violent succession conflicts. A ghost of a smile. It hasn't been used in 400 years, which is precisely why it still carries force. Ancient law is harder to argue against. Marcus's mind raced through implications. A human holding direct authority over Valkyrie royal decisions would trigger diplomatic earthquakes. Other species would see it as unprecedented human influence. The Crown Prince would view it as ultimate betrayal. And Marcus himself would become the most hated human in the Protectorate, possibly in the galaxy. But millions of human lives hung in the balance. What exactly would this position require, he asked. Your physical presence at the palace. Access to all council proceedings. The right to demand justification for any royal order. The ability to delay implementation of any decision for up to 30 standard days while you review its implications. The Queen Mother paused. And the obligation to act as a true advisor, not merely as humanity's agent. The law requires you to serve Valkyrie interests. You simply get to define what those interests are through a different lens than my son's. He'll try to kill me. He'll try to discredit you. Assassination of a binding advisor triggers automatic investigation and potential succession challenges. My son is ambitious, not stupid. The Queen Mother's voice grew softer. But you will face hostility beyond anything you've experienced. You'll be isolated, targeted, and blamed for every difficulty that arises during the transition year. You'll make enemies who will remember your interference for generations. Why me? Marcus asked. There are human ambassadors with more seniority, more diplomatic experience, because my daughter said you were kind. The Queen Mother's hand found Livara's, holding gently. Because you stayed until you were certain someone else could breathe. Because your notes showed understanding rather than exploitation. Because you're young enough to survive a year of political warfare, but experienced enough to recognize when violence is genuine threat versus political theater. Her eyes held his. And because you're the only human I trust to use this power without becoming the threat my son fears. Marcus looked at Livara, who watched him with those strange pattern-seeing eyes. The child who'd kept a secret for months, who'd processed information others would have weaponized, who'd brought truth to her dying mother because she believed it mattered. If I refuse, he asked, I'll die knowing I tried. You'll return to Earth and warn your government, and they'll prepare as best they can. My son will strike when he believes the moment is optimal, and millions will die in the first wave alone. The galaxy will fracture into factions, and the peace we've built over centuries will collapse. The Queen Mother's voice dropped to barely audible. And I'll die knowing my final legacy was the sun who burned the stars. Marcus thought of the colony worlds, Kepler Station New Shanghai, the agrodomes on Mars 2. He thought of families who'd left Earth seeking hope among distant suns. He thought of the Marines who'd served beside him, the diplomats who'd sacrificed careers building bridges between species, the scientists who'd shared knowledge across biological divides. He thought of Captain Thalvor outside these doors, waiting with rigid discipline. Of the Crown Prince somewhere in this palace, planning war. Of the council members who'd smile at Marcus tomorrow while secretly hoping humanity would simply disappear. If I accept, he said slowly, I'll need guarantees. Protection for my family on Earth. Secure communication channels with human government. Extraction protocols if the situation becomes untenable. All of that will be arranged. The Queen Mother gestured to the holographic documents. The law provides for the binding advisor's security and communication rights. Harming you or blocking your communications would violate the provisions and trigger succession challenges. Your son will find loopholes. He'll try. You'll have to be smarter. The faintest hint of approval entered her voice. I've watched your career, Envoy Kane. You've navigated situations that destroyed others. You've turned enemies into cautious allies. You've survived 5 years in a palace designed to intimidate humans. She paused. But this will be different. This will be survival through deliberate antagonism, being the obstacle everyone blames while somehow maintaining enough legitimacy to function. Sounds delightful. It will be hell. The Queen Mother's honesty was almost refreshing, but it will be hell that saves lives. Marcus stared at the holographic documents, watching alien script scroll past. He thought of the phrase, "Humanity fuck yeah," that had become an unofficial motto among the colonies. The dark humor of a species that kept surviving situations they shouldn't. The stubborn refusal to accept extinction when the universe kept trying to arrange it. Maybe that was the point. Maybe humanity's role in the galaxy wasn't to be loved or welcomed, but to be the uncomfortable presence that forced everyone else to justify their actions. "I'll need 3 things," Marcus said finally. First, Lavera's protection. If I'm serving as binding advisor, she becomes a target for anyone wanting leverage against me. Agreed. The Queen Mother glanced at her daughter. She'll be assigned personal security, elevated to formal princess status, given quarters in the protected wings. Second, Captain Thelver is head of my security detail. The Queen Mother's patterns flickered surprise. The captain whose protocols you just violated. The captain who takes his duty seriously enough to question a dying queen's attendant. If I'm going to have Velkari guards, I want ones who follow law rather than convenience. Interesting choice, the Queen Mother considered. Thelver is loyal to the throne, not to my son specifically. He'll serve you faithfully, but he won't like you. I'm not looking for friendship. I'm looking for someone who won't stab me the moment it's politically convenient. Very well. Third requirement, Marcus took a breath. When this is over, when the year ends and I've completed the binding advisor term, I want formal diplomatic recognition for the colony worlds the Crown Prince plans to strike. Full protectorate membership, trade agreements, the legal protections that come with recognized sovereignty. You're negotiating for territory? I'm negotiating for lives. If those colonies have formal legal standing, attacking them becomes an act of war against recognized protectorate members. That changes the political calculation. It makes preventive strikes much more costly legally and diplomatically. The Queen Mother was silent for long moments, her breathing the only sound in the chamber. Finally, she nodded slowly. If you complete the full year without violating the binding advisor laws, I'll have the necessary documentation prepared to take effect immediately at term's end. The Council won't like it, but the legal framework exists for exactly this kind of diplomatic negotiation. Her eyes hardened. But if you fail, if you're removed for legitimate violation of the advisor code, humanity gets nothing. The colonies remain vulnerable, and my son proceeds with his plans. Understood. Then approach. Marcus moved forward, acutely aware that he was about to commit to something irreversible. Lavera stepped aside, her expression grave with understanding beyond her years. The Queen Mother's hand rose, trembling with effort. Marcus extended his own, and their hands met, her skin cool and textured like fine crystals, his warm and rough by comparison. Do you, Marcus Kane of humanity, accept the role of binding advisor to Crown Prince Calvin of the Velkari Protectorate, with all legal rights and obligations therein, to serve faithfully for 1 standard year from the date of my death? The formal words carried weight that pressed against Marcus's chest. Behind him, he sensed the chamber's recording systems capturing every word, every gesture, making this moment legally unbreakable. I accept. Light erupted from the holographic display, washing over both of them. Marcus felt something like static electricity dance across his skin as the legal documents finalized, binding him to a role that would define the next year of his life. The Queen Mother sagged back against her platform, exhausted. It's done. The documents will be transmitted to the Council within the hour. My son will receive formal notification simultaneously. A weak laugh. I wish I could see his face. He'll fight this, Marcus said. He'll challenge every interpretation, test every boundary, and make your life as difficult as law allows. The Queen Mother's eyes closed briefly. But he'll obey, because refusing means forfeiting everything he's worked toward. My son's ambition is his greatest strength and weakness. He won't sacrifice the throne for the satisfaction of rejecting you. Your Majesty? Lavara's voice was small. Are you tired? So tired, little light. The Queen Mother's hand found her daughter's again, but relieved. I can rest now, knowing I've done what I could. Marcus bowed formally. I should inform Captain Thelver. The palace will need to adjust security protocols. Wait. The Queen Mother's eyes opened again, fixing on him with fading intensity. One more thing. When my son moves against you, and he will find ways within the law to make your position untenable, remember that you're fighting for time, not victory. You don't need to win every confrontation. You just need to survive long enough for humanity to prepare, for alliances to solidify, for the political costs of war to become too high. Survival through persistence. Survival through being too stubborn to die. The Queen Mother's smile was genuine this time. Your species has turned that into an art form. Use it. Marcus bowed again, deeper this time. Thank you for this trust. I'll honor it. Honor my daughter's observation, the Queen Mother corrected. She saw clearly when everyone else was blind. Perhaps that's her divergence's gift, seeing truth beneath political masks. Her breathing grew more labored. Now go. Let Captain Thelver know his life just became significantly more complicated. And Envoy Kane? Yes, Your Majesty. Don't be kind. Not for the next year. Be effective. The words followed Marcus as he and Levara crossed back toward the massive doors. They opened silently, revealing Captain Thelver and the attendant waiting in rigid tableau. Thelver's eyes narrowed as Marcus emerged. The audience is concluded? No, Marcus said quietly. It's just beginning. Captain, I need to speak with you privately. Immediately. Regarding your new assignment. Marcus met the captain's gaze directly. As of this moment, you report directly to me. We have approximately 1 hour before this becomes official council knowledge, and I need you prepared for what's coming. Thelvor's patterns flickered through confusion, anger, and disbelief in rapid sequence. Explain. Walk with me. This isn't a conversation for open corridors. Marcus moved past the captain, trusting that discipline would compel Thelvor to follow. Behind him, he heard the captain's hesitation, then the soft chime of crystalline armor as he fell into step. Levara remained in the doorway, watching them go with those strange, seeing eyes. Marcus glanced back once and saw her smile, small and sad and hopeful all at once. Then the massive doors closed, and Marcus walked into his new life as the galaxy's most inconvenient human. The next hour unfolded with the controlled chaos of an avalanche. Marcus appropriated a secure conference chamber 3 levels below the royal quarters, its walls designed to block surveillance and dampen sound. Captain Thelver followed with increasingly rigid silence as Marcus explained the situation in clinical, efficient detail. You expect me to believe, Thelver said when Marcus finished, his voice dangerously quiet, that the Queen Mother appointed a human as binding advisor to the Crown Prince, that you now hold legal authority to question royal decisions, that I'm being reassigned to serve someone who violated a dozen protocols less than 2 hours ago. I don't expect you to believe anything, Marcus said. I expect you to verify independently, contact the Royal Archives, review the legal codes, confirm the Queen Mother's authority to make this appointment. He pulled up a holographic display showing the formal documents, now sealed with royal marks. Take 30 minutes, investigate thoroughly. Then decide if you're serving law or serving your prejudices. Thelvor's patterns went utterly still, the Velkari equivalent of barely controlled rage. You dare! I dare remind you that your oath is to the throne and the law, not to your comfort or your opinions of my species. Marcus kept his voice level. If the law says I'm binding advisor, your duty is clear. If the law says otherwise, I'll accept your rejection and deal with consequences. But know this, Captain. I didn't seek this position. I accepted it because millions of lives depend on someone standing between the Crown Prince and a war he's planning to start. That's treason to suggest. That's political reality the Queen Mother confirmed in private audience. She provided evidence I'm prepared to share with you once you've verified my legal standing. Marcus leaned forward. You're a soldier, Captain. You understand threat assessment. The Queen Mother identified a threat and took action to neutralize it. I'm the action she took. Now the question is whether you'll help me succeed or whether you'll obstruct and watch the consequences unfold. Thelver stood frozen for 3 heartbeats, his 4 eyes cycling through patterns of emotion Marcus couldn't fully read. Then he turned sharply and left the chamber without another word. Marcus waited alone, counting seconds, reviewing contingencies. If Thelver rejected the assignment, Marcus would need new security immediately. If Thelver contacted the Crown Prince before verification, the response would be swift and politically devastating. If Thelver simply disappeared, Marcus had bigger problems than security protocols. 28 minutes later, the chamber door opened. Thelvor entered. His pattern settled into something between resignation and determination. "The law confirms your authority," he said flatly. "The royal archives show the appointment was properly executed. The Queen Mother's signature carries legal weight until the moment of her death." End of pause. "I've been formally reassigned to your security detail." "My oath compels obedience." "Your oath compels duty," Marcus corrected. "I don't want obedience. I want a guard captain who'll tell me when I'm about to do something stupid, who'll maintain discipline even when I'm making decisions you disagree with, and who'll protect me because it's the law, not because you like me. I don't like you. I know. That's why you're perfect for this job." Marcus pulled up another display. "Here's what I need immediately. First, secure quarters with controllable access points. Second, communication equipment that can't be casually monitored. Third, a security detail you trust personally. Soldiers who follow orders even when those orders conflict with their political preferences." "You're describing a siege mentality. I'm describing survival protocol for the next year. The Crown Prince will receive notification of my appointment and..." Marcus checked the time. 18 minutes. "Within the hour, every council member will know. By evening, the entire palace will understand that a human now holds authority over royal decisions. The political backlash will be immediate and severe." "You'll be blamed for everything," Thelvor said quietly. "I'll be blamed for everything," Marcus confirmed. "Which means you and your team will face hostility by association. Your career prospects just became complicated, Captain." "I'm sorry for that." Thelvor's patterns shifted slightly, something like bitter amusement. "My career was already complicated the moment I accepted assignment to human diplomatic liaison. My family questioned the wisdom. My colleagues suggested I'd wasted my potential." He moved to the holographic display, studying it with professional assessment. "If I'm already condemned by association, I might as well ensure the association doesn't get killed. That would reflect poorly on my service record." "Practical. Survival," Thelvor corrected, echoing Marcus's earlier word. "You're not the only one who understands necessity, human." The door chimed. Incoming priority message. Marcus accepted it, and Crown Prince Calvin's face materialized in the holographic space, his pattern showing rigidly controlled fury. "Envoy Kane." The Crown Prince's voice could have frozen nitrogen. "I've received notification of my mother's decision. I'm certain there's been some misunderstanding. The binding advisor provision hasn't been invoked in centuries. Surely the Queen Mother's illness has created confusion." "The Queen Mother was lucid and specific," Marcus said carefully. "I've accepted the appointment after reviewing its legal requirements. I understand this creates complications, Your Highness, but the law seems clear." "The law," Calvin said, his voice dropping dangerously, "was never intended for cross-species application. Binding advisors were always Valkyrie, chosen from trusted counselors, meant to provide wisdom during succession. The law doesn't specify species. It specifies qualifications and authority. I meet the legal requirements." Marcus kept his tone respectful but firm. "I've studied the provision extensively over the past hour, Your Highness. If you believe I'm unqualified, the law provides appeal mechanisms. I'll cooperate fully with any formal review." The Crown Prince's patterns flickered, anger seeking legal outlet and finding none. "This appointment is a political insult. It suggests I require supervision by an outsider, by someone who can't possibly understand Valkyrie governance. It suggests the Queen Mother trusts me to provide perspective during a difficult transition," Marcus interrupted gently. "Nothing more, nothing less. My role is advisory and oversight, not governance. You remain Crown Prince. Your authority continues. I simply provide an additional voice in critical decisions. A human voice. A voice representing the species most likely to benefit from influencing protectorate policy during vulnerable transition. A voice representing the species most invested in maintaining stable relations with the protectorate," Marcus countered. "Your Highness, I understand your concerns. They're legitimate, but I've accepted this role in good faith and I intend to serve the protectorate's interests as the law requires. We'll see." The Crown Prince's image leaned forward. "Emergency council session in 2 hours. Your presence is required, Binding Advisor. We'll discuss the parameters of your authority and the limitations I intend to impose. Captain Thelvor will coordinate security." "Thelvor?" Surprise flickered across Calvin's face. "My mother assigned him to your detail?" "I requested him. The captain has proven himself reliable and dedicated to proper protocol." Marcus held the Crown Prince's gaze. I wanted security that served law rather than political convenience. The message was clear. Marcus wouldn't be using guards who'd look the other way during convenient accidents. Kilven's patterns tightened further. 2 hours, he repeated. Don't be late, advisor. The council dislikes waiting, and you've already generated enough resentment for your first day. The connection terminated. Thelver exhaled slowly. That went better than expected, the captain said. He's being careful. He knows this session will be recorded, analyzed, used as precedent. He can't appear overtly hostile, or it looks like he's afraid of oversight. Marcus dismissed the holographic display, but he'll use the council to attack my legitimacy. He'll have allies prepared with legal arguments, historical precedents, constitutional interpretations designed to minimize my authority. Can he succeed? Not immediately. The law is too clear. But he can create enough ambiguity to make every intervention I attempt a legal battle. Marcus moved toward the door. Which means I need to understand council dynamics before I walk into that chamber. I need to know who supports the Crown Prince, who might be neutral, and who might secretly welcome a check on his authority. You want intelligence. I want context. There's a difference. Delver considered, then nodded slowly. Come with me. There's someone you should meet. They navigated through palace corridors with increased security presence. Word was spreading, guards clustering in whispered conversations that fell silent as Marcus passed. He felt the weight of their stares, measuring him, calculating how this human's elevation would affect their lives. Telver led him to a chamber that served as palace guard headquarters, where officers coordinated security operations. One figure stood alone reviewing holographic patrol routes, an older Valkyrie female whose silver markings indicated senior rank. Commander Silith, Thelver said formally. Permission to speak privately? The commander glanced up, her patterns flickering recognition and subtle concern. Captain, I heard about your reassignment. Interesting times. That's an understatement. Commander, I know who he is. Sileth's gaze fixed on Marcus with unsettling intensity. The human who just became the palace's most dangerous resident. Whether danger to us or danger to himself remains unclear. Potentially both, Marcus said. Captain Thelvor suggested you might provide insight into council dynamics. I have 2 hours before an emergency session designed to undermine my authority, and I'd prefer not to walk in completely blind. Silith studied him for long moments, patterns shifting through what Marcus guessed was calculation. Finally, she dismissed the holographic display and gestured toward a private office. 20 minutes, she said. That's all the time we have for this to remain a professional briefing rather than political conspiracy. The office was sparse, functional furniture, tactical displays, the organized chaos of a military professional's workspace. Silith closed the door and activated privacy fields that hummed softly at the edges of Marcus's hearing. The council has 23 members, she began without preamble. 12 are traditional conservatives who view change as threat. 8 are progressive moderates who support cautious integration with new species, including humanity. 3 are political opportunists who will support whoever seems to be winning. Which side does the Crown Prince control? Depends on the issue. For matters of expansion and military policy, he can usually count on 14 votes. For domestic governance, the numbers shift. Silith pulled up a holographic chart showing council member profiles, but regarding your appointment, he'll have overwhelming support. Even progressives are uncomfortable with a human holding authority over royal decisions. It's unprecedented, potentially destabilizing, and offensive to those who see it as the Queen Mother choosing an outsider over her own son. So I'm walking into a chamber full of hostility. You're walking into a political ambush. Silith highlighted specific council members. These 5 will attack your competency, arguing you lack understanding of Valkyrie history, culture, and law. These 3 will question your loyalty, suggesting you'll prioritize human interests regardless of legal obligations. These 4 will focus on procedural challenges, claiming the binding advisor provision requires specific vetting processes you haven't undergone. And the Crown Prince? He'll position himself as reluctantly accepting the law while expressing grave concerns. He'll appear magnanimous while his allies destroy your credibility. Silith's patterns showed something like sympathy. It's effective strategy. He avoids direct confrontation while ensuring you're so damaged politically that any future interventions carry no weight. Marcus absorbed the information, mapping out countermoves. Who might stay neutral? Councillor Merval leads the progressive faction. She supported humanity's initial integration and has advocated for stronger human-Valkyrie cooperation. But she'll be cautious, Supporting you too openly could damage her political standing. Silith highlighted another profile. Counselor Thexel is an opportunist who calculates every move. If you can demonstrate competency quickly, he might shift toward cautious support. Long odds. Survival odds, Silith said, which is better than none. Marcus studied the profiles, memorizing faces, positions, and political alignments. Why are you helping me? You're risking association with the palace's newest pariah. Because the Queen Mother trusted you enough to use her final political capital appointing you. Silas' voice softened slightly. I've served under her leadership for 20 years. She's never made a decision without profound reason. If she believed you were necessary, I am willing to trust that judgment, at least until you prove unworthy of it. Fair enough. Marcus checked the time. 90 minutes remaining. What's the most important thing I need to understand before entering that council chamber? That you're not there to win arguments, Soeth said. You're there to establish that you can't be easily dismissed. Take their attacks, respond with law rather than emotion, and don't try to make them like you. Fear of your legal authority is more useful than affection for your personality. Friendship through intimidation, very human. Survival through deterrence, Silith corrected. Very universal. The emergency council session convened in the great chamber at the palace's heart, a crystalline space designed to amplify sound and create acoustic patterns that made lying uncomfortable for Velkari physiology. Marcus entered with Thelver and 2 additional guards, their presence announcing his formal security status. 23 council members occupied elevated platforms arranged in a horseshoe configuration. The Crown Prince sat at the center position, slightly elevated, his ceremonial robes marked with succession symbols. His patterns showed perfect political neutrality, but his eyes tracked Marcus with predatory focus. Envoy Kane, Kaelvin said formally. The council convenes to discuss your unprecedented appointment as binding advisor. Please approach the central platform. Marcus walked forward into the space where all council members could observe him equally. The chamber's acoustics made every footstep echo. He felt the weight of their attention like physical pressure. Before we begin, Councillor Jerkin, one of the conservative faction spoke sharply. I must question this entire proceeding's legitimacy. The binding advisor provision was intended for Velkari councillors. Extending it to other species violates both spirit and historical precedent. The law's text, Marcus responded carefully, specifies qualifications without mentioning species. Legal interpretation requires adherence to written statute rather than assumed intent. Convenient interpretation? Another councillor interjected. You benefit from technicality while ignoring tradition. I benefit from law, Marcus corrected, as do you all. If we interpret law based on convenient assumption rather than written text, we undermine the legal structures protecting everyone in this chamber. Murmurs rippled through the council. Marcus saw Councillor Merval's pattern shift slightly, not agreement, but acknowledgement of valid point. Let's address practical concerns, Crown Prince Calvin said smoothly. Envoy Kane, you claim authority to delay royal decisions. What limitations do you acknowledge on that authority? The law specifies I can delay implementation for up to 30 days while reviewing implications. I cannot prevent decisions indefinitely. Only ensure they're examined thoroughly before execution. And if you disagree with the decision's wisdom, I can appeal to the council for additional review. The law provides mechanisms for resolving disputes between binding advisor and Crown authority. Mechanisms that could paralyze governance during critical moments, another councillor said. What if urgent action is required? The law provides emergency provisions for immediate threats, Marcus replied, but emergency authority requires evidence of genuine crisis, not merely convenient urgency. I'm obligated to examine whether claimed emergencies are legitimate or politically manufactured. The chamber's temperature seemed to drop. Marcus had just stated explicitly that he'd questioned the Crown Prince's emergency powers, the exact authority Kaelvin planned to use for launching attacks on human colonies. You suggest, Kaelvin said softly, that I would manufacture crises for political gain. I suggest that any authority figure might be tempted to define urgency in self-serving ways. My role is ensuring genuine necessity rather than convenient acceleration. Marcus kept his voice respectful but firm. That's precisely why the binding advisor provision exists, to provide independent assessment during vulnerable transitions. Independent, Councillor Thexel said thoughtfully. Yet you're human. How do we trust your assessments aren't biased towards your species' interests? You can't, Marcus admitted. Just as I can't trust that council assessments aren't biased toward Velkari interests, but the law requires me to serve protectorate welfare, which includes maintaining stable relations with humanity. If I violate that obligation, you can appeal for my removal. The provision includes accountability mechanisms, which require months of legal proceedings, another counselor protested, during which you retain authority, during which I face intense scrutiny of every action, Marcus countered. If I'm clearly violating my legal obligations, that scrutiny produces evidence supporting removal. The system balances authority with accountability. The debate continued for another hour. Attacks and responses, legal interpretations and counterinterpretations, philosophical arguments about tradition versus written law. Marcus felt exhaustion creeping in but maintained focus. Telvor stood at attention nearby, his presence lending legitimacy to Marcus's security status. Finally, Counselor Merville spoke. This debate could continue indefinitely. I suggest we acknowledge reality. The appointment is legally valid whether we like it or not. Our focus should be establishing clear protocols for interaction between binding advisor and Crown authority. Protocols that limit potential damage, another counselor added. Protocols that ensure functionality, Merville corrected. Unless someone can demonstrate actual legal invalidity in the appointment, we're wasting time challenging what can't be changed. Silence stretched. Marcus saw the Crown Prince's patterns flicker frustration. His allies had damaged Marcus's credibility but couldn't remove him. Very well, Kelvin said finally. The binding advisor appointment stands, subject to protocol development. Envoy Kane, you'll report to the Council weekly regarding your activities. You'll maintain transparency about your reasoning for any delays or appeals, and you'll accept that your authority exists only as defined by strict legal interpretation, not expansive reading of ambiguous clauses. Agreed, Marcus said. I'll operate within clear legal boundaries and maintain full transparency regarding my decisions. Then this session is concluded. The Crown Prince stood, his movements precise with controlled anger. Welcome to your new position, advisor. I hope you find it educational. The council members dispersed, leaving Marcus standing alone in the chamber's center. Thelver approached quietly. You survived, the captain observed. I established I can't be easily removed, Marcus corrected. That's not the same as surviving the next year. One day at a time, human. One day at a time. They left the chamber together, moving through corridors now filled with guards and officials who stared with open hostility. Marcus felt their resentment like physical weight. Somewhere in these halls, the Crown Prince was planning his next move. Somewhere above, the Queen Mother lay dying, her final gambit complete. Somewhere in the palace's protected wings, Levara probably didn't understand the chaos her simple act of honesty had created. Marcus had stepped into a role designed to prevent war through sheer stubborn presence. Now he had to survive long enough to matter. The weight of a crown pressed down on him, not one he wore, but one he'd agreed to balance on his shoulders while others tried to knock it off. He walked forward into his new life, one careful step at a time.